Salete mihi nomen est Stella et hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 225 for September MMXXII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So, if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, my next guest, which I had no plans to have this person on my show because he disavowed it. He said once he hit this particular issue number, he was done with Batgirl Oracle. And I had been updating him and letting him know, hey, I'm finally getting to this section of Nightwing and Batgirl that you told me about. And then he invited himself on the show. So, yes, this guy, I love him and despise him in equal measure. He is my chief hypocrisy correspondent and Batjerk whisperer. So, welcome or don't welcome to the show, Donovan Morgan Grant.
How dare you?
Oh.
Chief hypocrisy. I was going to come at that with you tonight. So you've already trampled my thumb. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, he said, would it be gauche if I invited myself on the show? And at first you said some weird word. I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. But yes, we're doing it. We're doing it because he told me about this. He was waiting for it and he wanted to come on. So even though, as I said, he's basically thrown Batgirl the Oracle aside, doesn't listen to the show, doesn't care about Cass anymore. Here he is. So he'll listen to himself anyways. But yeah,
So many words in my mouth that I'm choking.
I'm sure you are. What's life been like for you?
Well, it's been quite an interesting year. We last saw each other in person. We last touched each other in person back in April when we went to New
With
York.
consent, of course.
Yes. And I'm getting ready to go to New York again, New York Comic Con for the first time in October. In between that, you were on not our last episode, but a recent episode of Questions We Don't Have Answers, talking about comfort media, in which I learned quite a lot. And in between all that, I've been doing more DC work. This past weekend was Batman Day. So if you go to DC.com, you can see my articles on Nightfall as a weekend binge suggestion and talking about the fight between Batman and Superman in The Dark Knight Returns. So I think that's all the safe for work content that you can check out in between my appearances on Batgirl to Oracle.
Safe for work content. Yes. Followers of both Donovan and me know that Donovan shares many of his bodybuilding pictures on the social medias, and immediately, because they're thirst traps, in my opinion, I think they're Stella aimed thirst traps. Immediately, I have to respond in some sort of inappropriate fashion. So, but I don't do that at work either because that's not safe for work. I did actually, as a punishment for you, I had planned a pop quiz where I was going to put a diagram of the female reproductive system and I was going to ask you to name as many parts as you could. But I wondered if my video would have gotten flagged on YouTube, so I decided not to. So you dodged a bullet.
What are you trying to prove by doing that?
That you don't know where things are?
Why would you imagine that I wouldn't?
I don't know. I just thought, you know what? I've talked about periods
I went to
and
high school.
vaginas, so that's true. That's true. But even I will admit that I don't know where a lot of like the very specific things are. I could only give you broad strokes of what things are.
Careful, that sounds hypocritical.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. This might be the #1 hypocrisy episode. But I do. We'll see. We should have a little gauge at the end of hypocrisy. I have a racial question for you. So people who
Good
know
way to
me,
start out.
yeah, I thought this would be a good little warm up question. And it connects to one of my required or my literature recommendations. When you read fiction, and fiction that might be more recent where you might not have an idea of what the story is, do you picture characters of your own race before the narration tells you what race they are?
No, because the majority of media features white characters, and if it's black characters, that's always front loaded. And it's always of a certain story. It's really, 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 really rare to read a story where the character just happens to be non-white. And typically, when it is a person of color, that's sort of like the point of the story more often than not. Um, and so it's kind of like you can't, at least in the stuff that the things that I read, you can't do that. You can't really read a book and have zero expectation for the race of the person, because it's always information that they're very from. And even on writing, I know that like that can be kind of tricky. Like, how do you describe a character of a certain background without? I remember, especially when I was into my own fiction writing, looking up a lot of online posts about ways in which you depict diversity that are not discriminatory or rely on old stereotypes. Like, you don't compare someone's skin tone to food, or you don't kind of like, lean on exaggerated physical features and stuff. But you don't have to like, be mute to them either. But I mean, like, I don't read fiction and end up surprised by someone's race typically, because that's usually described right up front. Their main character, they're a supporting character. Then I remember I was reading Stephen King's, I forget which one it was, but one of his Hodges trilogy books, which involves like a private investigator. And there's a scene where he was interacting with uh, a detective who he described as, I forget the character's name, but like he described him as one of the characters from The Wire, and
Mm.
I knew exactly who he was referring to. So I mean, I think he said, "Oh, he's an older black guy," but like it helped me kind of zero in. But it's still like, it's a way for you to kind of understand what that is without really like making a big deal about it. But at the same time, if the character wasn't black, I don't think he would describe him as like, a white character from The Wire kind of thing. It's just, have you read fiction where, oh, they're black and you don't know that till like after the book's over?
I asked this because I've been reading this YA book and I guess I generally assume, I don't know if it's because of me, but I just like go in thinking unless you tell me otherwise, I'm assuming these characters are white. And even though I do have a non-white lead, I was unaware that she was non-white until later on. And there was one detail because she was talking about her brother who is homecoming king, and she said it was unusual for an Asian, like he's attractive, he was an Asian homecoming king that's saying something. And so I thought, okay, is he adopted? Is she also Asian? I don't know. And then later on, there was something like more than halfway through the book that, okay, so actually, this lead character she's Korean because there's this whole thing with her mom and something in the food court. But that was like, oh, wow, now I have to like rewrite my brain of how I was envisioning this. And so I don't need necessarily, I don't know how you do it subtly. Like, I guess
What was the
maybe
character's name?
Molly.
What was her last name?
Parker, I think.
Oh,
So yeah, so there weren't any sort of hints leading up to that. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I doing something very bad where I'm kind of assigning whiteness to these characters without knowing? But I like when they give a descriptor of, and it's a YA romance. So I would expect like the other character to be describing who she is, but they never really did talk about her. And so I had to figure it out later. But I just wondered if is it because I'm white? Is it because or do we just generally assume that characters are white until told otherwise?
have you
And is
heard?
that a failing with our society?
Have you heard? Have you heard people like opine? oh, you assume that this character was white, but they're actually not. Have you heard that as a thing to complain about? Because I feel that like the way that like media is, the way that things have been written, that's just how we were kind of naturally um, primed to read fiction, unless the story is about something else. Otherwise, like I don't think there's something like, oh no, I'm racist because I thought they were white. I don't, that doesn't to me sound very believable to um, posit that as an element of discrimination as rather than just I don't know. It's like there's an old black exploitation movie. It's like Akbar the Superman or something like that, where a black family move in and like these white women are like, oh well, there's they say like they see like the husband and wife. They're like, oh well, there's the maid and there's the chauffeur. And the guy's like, oh no, this is my house, I own the house. And then she's like, no, no, you're the chauffeur and she's the maid. And like she like, flips out, like you know, okay, it's like in the '70s, it's a it's a it's a racialized presumption. But when someone says otherwise and you insist that can't be because that goes outside your expectations, then it's racist.
Yeah.
But I think that I think honestly, because of like the context of media, then presumption, even if it's misinformed, that's just kind of that's the nuance. This is all about Batgirl, folks. That's part of the nuances of how this is, how we interact with race. And I think that like it doesn't do us good to presume the worst case scenario in every single instance. It does certainly helps to consider it, but I personally wouldn't imagine that to be like a sign of like white guilt or white fragility or what have you, just because um somebody in a book you're reading ends up not being white and you weren't given any heads up for that, because that's just that can just be part of a new way of storytelling that we are getting used to for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, a lot of these characters can be defined by the reader. So even if you can't tell their race, maybe someone can come in and assign their own race because it doesn't necessarily matter. Whereas there are some books that a race needs to be a certain way because the storytelling is like such a fun age that the main character needed to be black in order for all the story points to work out. I feel like when I read Little Fires Everywhere,
Uh-huh.
I don't think there are any moments that we give a race to any of the characters, and I just assumed whiteness. But when they assigned Kerry Washington, it added a whole who does a wonderful job in that series, but it added a whole new layer and depth to it that made it, I think, even richer. So I think you have that certain freedom as well. But I think maybe, I mean, I'm hoping that it's, yeah, not racist, but I think it might just come because I'm white, and when I read things, I do like to find similarities between the characters, or engage in that way, and like, oh yeah, I can really see myself in her. So it's easier to do that potentially. Yeah, just because, oh yeah, well maybe she's short and she has blonde hair, just try to find something like that in them. But
Well, that's something that Harry and I are actually messaging about actually today in regards to a potential podcast episode. Like we like like we were messaging like where it could go and what we feel about it in regards to media, race and media. And I think that like there's this sort of false narrative that is a lot more combative in regards to like a diverse cast or diversity in genres that those genres are unaccustomed to. But I think I don't want to say it's far less of a deal, but I think the deal is different than how some people are trying to describe it as. And I think when we're kind of like in close proximity to certain arguments, that can color our anticipation or even our concern over it when we might otherwise not be too concerned. I don't know. I mean, like, race is always complex.
yeah.
Um, so I don't think that like I think just understanding that basic fact can put a lot of anxiety off of our shoulders, and just seeking the best way to kind of go about things is healthy enough. It just turns okay, what's the best way to approach this? And if somebody has a problem with how some things are being perceived by some other people, you still work to work that out rather than try to kind of just freeze up at the notion of like, well, this might be a racist thing I'm thinking about. Because maybe it is a racist thing, but you can still recognize that and move beyond that anyway.
Yeah, which is why I wanted to ask you because I'm like, oh wait, Molly is Korean. I hadn't thought about that, but I think the current generations, the younger generations, younger than us, I think they have eh, some privilege that maybe we didn't have because there are so many books coming out where their leads are people of color. Whereas with us, I think, and I even think about all the literature that I've read because of Royce Gilmore's and, classic literature, like all those are very white casts. And so, yeah, maybe I'm just conditioned to initially think like, well, this is probably, unless I'm told otherwise, this character probably is white. Whereas now, I think people can go and be like, I can just make this character who I want them to be. So,
I mean, I remember Harry telling me that, like, because yes, he's a few years younger than us, he thought that the Green Lantern character was black because of Justice League Unlimited. Like, he just imagined, oh, Green Lantern. I heard of him as a comic character. That's the one on the cartoon, John Stewart. And so when the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, he was just confused.
yeah.
And apparently, a lot of people his age were confused. And that's what diversity does: is that like
Yeah.
it normalizes diversity is a normalizing thing, and kind of going back on that, just kind of like adds more questions about the world than there really should be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I'll talk about that book once we get to it. Before we get into what we're doing today, do you have anything that's been bringing you joy recently? This is the Find Your Joy segment, aka Shag's Mac and Cheese of Comfort and Joy.
Oh yeah. I'm enjoying the Sandman Netflix show.
Okay.
I don't binge it because I find myself needing to be in kind of a mood to watch certain things. And it's not like
Mhm.
Sandman is a particularly like darker. I mean, it can't be dark. In fact, the last episode I watched was very dark. But it is a consistently entertaining show. I'm really happy I'm watching it. I was never great about trying to read the comics, and it's a very acclaimed comic run. And from what I understand, it's very, very close to the comics, with Gaiman, front and center in terms of helming the show. So I mean, I've enjoyed every episode. It's not been a beat missed. Um, so that's really in terms of new content. Like, I've already told you that I've been like doing this big Spider-Man film rewatch for purposes of a show that's don't shake your head for the purposes of a show that's being recorded this weekend on Earth2.net. That's a bit of a preview. It's not been super publicly announced, but I mean, like it's not really a secret anyway. And so that's been a very, very, very interesting experience after all this time to revisit some of these older films. Uh, aside from that, just kind of keeping my eye on at the gaming world. There's been a lot of news about Street Fighter 6, which is a franchise that's near and dear to my heart. So that's been interesting. But yeah, I would say that like to keep it brief, Sandman's a good show that I recommend. Unless I mean, I've heard that like it sticks the landing throughout the end. So unless it turns away, like I heard that's a solid show.
Listen, it can't possibly be Cowboy Bebop live
I think it
action.
can.
Yeah, it's on my list, but I have yet to get to it.
The person who played Grin on that show is I think they are either Destiny or Delirium in Sandman, like the non-binary, like the way that they did Grin in the live action Cowboy Bebop show as like the bartender
Oh,
character.
yes, yes.
Yeah, Mason Alexander Park, I believe the person's name is. They showed up at the very end of this most recent episode. It's like, oh,
Okay. There you go. And I
all
know
right.
Brienne of Tarth is in it too. I'm a fan of hers.
I
That's
assume
not
so.
her
I'm not sure
actual
who that
name.
is.
She's very tall. I can't remember her actual name. That's bad.
Oh,
Chris.
Phasma.
Yes, also known as Phasma. Yeah.
She played Lucifer.
Yes. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I will get to that. I've only read the first volume of that because I wanted to know what the hype was. Because non-comic fans will read that, will read Sandman. And that's
Yes.
kind of like the one thing that they might read, that or Watchmen. And so the fact that it is something that can bring non-comic readers into, I think is pretty good and profound.
Yeah, we've been
As
selling a lot of that at the store, the
okay.
comics.
Wow. Well, because it's Shag's Mac and Cheese and Comfort and Joy, just shout out to Shagalicious, whose birthday is coming up on the same day as Barbara Gordon's birthday, September 23rd. They're probably the
How
same
ironic.
age. How ironic. I am going to be visiting the Bamboozler, aka Harry Harold Harrison, the fish shoot soon to run a 5K. So we'll see who survives that experience. I'll be sure to tell you guys next episode. And yeah, I guess what I've been watching has been selling selling Sunset and selling the OC, which are ridiculous. What are those called? Um Real TV,
Oh,
reality
reality shows?
TV, yes, but it is these really glammed up, glitzy women selling real estate in Hollywood and then also the OC. But it's all about the drama, and the drama gets out of control. So
Oh my goodness.
what was nice about it, though, because this is something that I appreciated, is that everyone, this is different than the hospital experience I had where they talk about you behind your back, but everyone would actually come up to you in Selling Sunset and tell you to your face the problem that they had with you. So I appreciated that, because then you could just have it out and get over it or not get over it. So, anyways, if you're looking for drama, then be sure to watch that. And I did binge that. So, I think that might be a guilty pleasure, because does it do anything to boost my character and my soul? No. But here we are. Okay, so we're going to get into it, folks. Now, this is a jammed packed episode, and we are focusing on Batgirl, but there are a couple Nightwings that we also want to talk about, and primarily 87, but 86 is the lead up. And I could have done 88 and 89, I think, too, because it kind of continues, but there's a lot going on in this episode. So we'll save it for next time. But just know that's like to be continued with a lot of stuff here. Need to move this away. Okay, I think it can be seen. So Nightwing 86, October 2003. And then the publisher synopsis: cyberpunk, street bikes, and machine guns are just the beginning of Dick Grayson's troubles. The coming times will be the most definitive epoch in Dick Grayson's history since he donned the mantle of Nightwing. So, okay, we're some big stuff happening there. So, there are just some things that I want to talk about as I flip through here. First of all, wow, this takes longer. First of all, and this is actually a
Yeah,
point of
boy.
contention, the fact that his arm is still bleeding from when he got shot, and this is a reason why Babs gets super upset, because as you see, you've got this panel, which is really good. Like, he comes in, he seems all cool as he's bleeding. You see this, which they didn't do a good job, because the word bubble is over the wound, and you can tell that that is supposed to be the focus of it, that she's looking at that, and then she gets really upset. And then, of course, my favorite thing, icicle word bubbles, where she tells Dick to actually get in here. And she does threaten. She says, start thinking of one good reason why I shouldn't call your dad. So he's on notice, as they say. And then
I love this. I love this. This is so good.
and then even though we see Dad, actually Babs calls up Alfred, and I love how Alfred is just, his dry wit is on display. And then of course he lets Batman have it. But there was one, let's see here. I shall be there presently and will find it in my heart to forgive you just this once, should you find it necessary to render him unconscious. So basically saying like good luck with everything. And then talking about, or to Batman, that Dick is, considering the war on crime kind of the number one thing, and not really his health. And he says, where did you suppose he got such a thing? And maybe Batman looks a
I
little
don't know.
chastened, but yeah, I know. If we continue, yeah, so here we go. And then I love how Alfred actually stitches him up without anesthesia. And Alfred says the first and second time a wound is closed, most certainly. By the third time you've opened your stitches, however, one feels inclined to support your body's right to its outrage and discomfort. And Dick yells, Babs, he's torturing me on purpose. And she says, good, I hope it really, really hurts. Yeah. So this was actually a really fun issue in terms of the interactions between the Bat family. And then it just gets really almost uncomfortable. Like
Dramatic.
there are some fun things where he is solving all these America's Most Wanted cases and all of that, but he is, and even Alfred knows, my deepest condolences, Miss Gordon, and I do wish you the best of luck. But the fact that he is just doing all of this stuff, he tries to make something wireless for Babs. Why would you think that was a good idea when Barbara Gordon knows computers that you are the best person to figure that out? But he's just getting in the way. She knows where things are because it's obviously accessible for her, and he's doing all of these things. And then he, as she will later say,
Invites
shows
Gordon
off.
over to the house.
Yes, invites her father over to the house, shows off his body basically in the not in a sexy way, but in a way of like, look at what I am able to do. And she takes that very negatively of like, you're doing this and I can't do that anymore.
He also like mentions, remember when we fought the Joker? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry I mentioned him.
Yes. Yeah, right here, wasn't it? Yeah, remember that time Joker got into the, let's say, Sunbright Bakery and started shooting at us
Yeah.
with flower cannons. Now that was a mess, and you can tell, oh man, that really hits a nerve. And he immediately says, Babs, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I said that. I'm just a moron. Sometimes my mouth moves faster than my brain. So yeah, foot and mouth. And then here's when we have this one of these. I wouldn't say it's a confrontation, but just like a let's be real sort of conversation. We have this in this issue, the next issue. I feel like it kind of continues. She says it's not about Joker. You don't need to walk on eggshells. What's done is done, but that's exactly the
Yeah.
problem, Dick. The past. I've never met anyone more present than you. Whatever you're doing, you're 100% there. Your focus is, it's breathtaking. It always has been. But something happens to you when you're with me. You get lost in these yesterdays we shared. And God, you're beautiful. You have no idea. Just looking at you makes me happy, but I don't know if I can do this anymore. Yeah, thoughts on this? I mean, do you think that is Dick stuck in the past, in particular when he's with her? Does it seem like it's been a consistent character flaw with him, or do you think this is something that's been developing, and in particular in this Devin Grayson era?
Well, I think, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned her name because I think that this is very much Devin Grayson. She talks very openly about this back then and even now, and even back when Josh and I interviewed her. She had a lot of thoughts on Dick Grayson and just what drives him, like which I think is unique. I don't see a lot of other writers really perceiving Dick in the way that she does, as somebody who is just so driven to help other people that he's sort of like burning himself at all into the candle, even at the best of times. And here he's kind of flailing. Barbara recognizes that he's kind of flaming out, like psychologically, and like I really like the detail that she's not really like upset because he mentioned the Joker. I mean, that's what it seems like. But she's like, no, it's not that. It's just how you are. Like you're constantly gleefully bringing up the past. You know, I can't. You're flipping around, and she mentions this later on in the next issue. Or no, she was yeah, on this page. She's like, like you're not really here with me now. I'm not what I used to be, and that's not like there's always a real tangible sense of self pity with Oracle, but I think that like this is a good storytelling beat for Dick because like if there is an argument against the Dick and Babs relationship, which is actually getting a lot of heat right now online, interestingly enough, it is that it's sort of a Silver Age nostalgic sort of like wish fulfillment thing, and that has less of a modern utility to some perspectives than it might have once a long time ago. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think that's a perfectly applicable perspective to have. And here she's saying, you're so looking backwards that you're not seeing what's in front of you. Are you actually seeing me how I am now? And look what it's doing to you. Like it's just driving her nuts. I think that's a very psychologically rich way to approach these characters, and I think that this is a part of I remember when I read this Devin Grayson run, I thought, you know what? Yes, issue 93 is coming, but up until that point, I thought she was like the by far and away the best writer on Nightwing's original series, like even better than Chuck Dixon. I really, really, really love this stuff.
I'm
What did you
also
think?
Oh yeah, I've been I mean, as much as my heart aches to have these characters go through this, I like how they're being really real. And I think Grayson, the writer, is able to thread this. Like this didn't come out of nowhere. We've been seeing this develop. He's been waxing nostalgic pretty frequently throughout, and also she's just frustrated that he's not taking care of himself either, which I think is another argument to be had too. I don't know if that's like
He's
limitations,
he's
like
acting he's acting like Robin. I'm
as
sorry, I
he
don't
was
interrupt.
when
Go
he
ahead.
was Robin, you mean?
Like really like flippant
Yeah.
and like kind of the laughing daredevil carefree. As Nightwing, he's a bit more mature. He's a bit calmer. I mean, he still has that sort of like show off cool factor, but here he's kind of like flying around like an animal. Like he's acting immature in almost a way that you can see him as Robin. But I interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I just wonder where that came from. I wonder if there's this connection with Joker's last laugh and what he went through in there and quote unquote killing the Joker, and then he was in this really dark level of despair, and so maybe now is this way to, if he acts that way, maybe he doesn't have to think about it. I don't know where exactly this is coming from. Why is he burning himself out and doing all of this kind of stuff? But it does seem like it might be a logical character development. But no, I was just saying that he's not taking care of himself, and I think she might resent that as well because her body, she did the best she could to take care of it, and here is how she is. So I feel like, Dick, you've got to take care of yourself and what you're doing. And also it's hard to watch someone you love not take care of themselves and put themselves in these really terrible situations and not listen to you. So yeah,
Yes, it
no,
is.
it's been interesting to watch this. I feel like maybe this is inevitable, but the fact that he was living with her for, I don't think they even got through a day, but he was being super obnoxious, that of course it happened. It came to a head at this point in time. But even though it says, I think maybe this is not gonna work, we're still together because the next issue would kind of bring it up. So it's one of those really long breakups where people we're talking about breaking up, but we're still together, which is also realistic because
Spoilers.
we do know that people go through that. Yes. Well, as much as you can get spoiled, I guess. Any other thoughts
Yeah.
on this one? I guess, yeah, that was it. Oh, my arm's not what I'm worried about losing. Oh, it's so sad. So sad.
Man, I remember when these books were out.
Yeah.
Um, and oh yeah, I think it's just top tier stuff.
Yeah.
And I love Patrick Zircher's artwork on this. Like I think he was like the primary Devin Grayson Nightwing artist. I know later on you get into uh other artists and stuff like that. But I love how Dick and Babs look adult.
Mhm.
Like they're not just young. They look like grown adults,
Yep.
like adults. And even like in the new Teen Titans stuff, I think Dick was even kind of drawn a little too old, just because of the way that the style was back then. But here, they look so mature, but they're not like Bruce Wayne or Diana Prince or anything like that. So like, I just really this feels real. This feels like, oh, it's a writer's take on a random run. It feels like the actual hardcore canon of the characters that I really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for Alan, who's my chief hairstyle correspondent, pretty nice little, I mean, her hair is a bit up in the back there, but I mean, she might have some shoulder length hair, but it's a nice little look that she's rocking. But yeah, it is interesting when you I feel like relationships that we have, obviously we come in a certain person, and then if that relationship doesn't work out, I think we leave a certain way. And I think which is what I tell, like Ellie or something, that every relationship we have teaches us something about a future relationship, and it could be romantic, it could be a friend as well. And so the Barbara now that we're reading, I think is a far cry from when she first started dating Dick, because she certainly was If I feel like she hated herself, she really, I think, hadn't yet reconciled being in the chair fully. It was still something she was kind of working against, and now she's, like, moved past that. She realizes, like, "This is who I am now," but to have someone constantly remind you of what it was, and it's, like, gonna pull her backwards, and she's already moved forward. So I can see where this is not necessarily a healthy thing for her to be in. Again, as much as it hurts my heart to say. Now we have 87, and I will say that I own this issue. I don't know if I own 86, but the fact is, I think I've said this before, but when I found out about Dick and Babs and, some fanfics, read those, and I compiled a list of Dick and Babs heavy issues, and just they were super random and out of context, but I found them and was reading them, and 87 is indeed one of the issues that I randomly have because it was a Dick and Babs centric. Now I
It's such an
feel
awesome cover.
I know. It does give you, because I thought, "Oh, is this the issue?" It is not yet. It is not. But it
No.
gives us enough of a hint of what's gonna happen. So this is Nightwing 87, November 2003. Blockbuster turns up the heat in his personal war against Nightwing, but when danger strikes close to home, will Dick Grayson's life ever be the same? So we actually start off, like I said, I thought that was going to be the end of them, but here they are on some sort of date, I guess, to continue to have a discussion about it. Now, one thing I found interesting is just she is so adamant about fighting Tarantula on her own that she doesn't want Dick to get involved. And even, yeah, she says, "Damn it, Dick." And I wondered why she wants to do it on her own, if it was just like her being stubborn, or is it because she doesn't want his secret identity to come out? Do you have any thoughts on why she wants to fight Tarantula on her own and doesn't want Dick involved?
I think it's multifaceted. I
Okay.
think she is still kind of worried about just like because that he's not doing great.
Yeah.
So she's just worried for him. Like I think if this is like a random thing where like he was fine and they were just out and they were being attacked by a villain, I don't really see her being like, no, Dick, don't do it. Like I don't think that that's like normal. I don't think that's something that she would just like naturally do because you know he's Nightwing, but because of how Dick's been lately, because he was recently hurt, because the Tarantula has attacked Oracle and she can take care of herself, because there's civilians later on, because of the whole identity thing, which she gets into later in the issue. I think that there's a number of reasons that aren't immediately spelled out, but you can kind of infer why she's like, okay, let me just take care of her, and it's awesome because look at that, look at that, that's so cool. And I love how Tarantula complains later on. You didn't tell me that she could do all that.
Yes, she sure does. There are some more icicle bubbles if I can find them. Yeah, no police. It wasn't to Dick this time, but it was to a concierge. At one point, I got confused because I thought that was Barbara. At one point, s-
Amusement
Nightwing
Mile.
is compared to Batjerk, which I thought was interesting. Let me see. Let me see. This
Next page.
was it this one? Oh yeah, congratulations. You managed to turn into Bruce after all. Bum bum bum.
Leave
That
him
is
out of
so
this.
unfair. What does that even mean? Man, yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, so I'm very proud of what you've accomplished, but does it have to come in the form of this messianic zealotry? Isn't one Batman enough? And then he punches a standing cardboard
That,
cutout.
that's kind of a. I think she was intentionally being mean there. Like that's not something that I don't think that's something that she would say that like he would like respond to. Like she knew that he was like she was trying to get his attention and like she knew that would really make him see red, and she said it anyway. God, I love that artwork. But
Yeah, but he baits her and says, as far as Bloodhaven's concerned, absolutely. And it'd be nice if that could buy me just a little bit of respect. It's not like he's being kind necessarily. Like they're having an argument.
oh, I know. But like uh, I think that like I don't think that like Barb because for so long Dick's had this sort of like albatross like relation. Like as Nightwing, he's had a very like um I don't want to say toxic, and I don't know if I want to say that because prodigals happened, but he's had a complicated relationship with Bruce, so I think like him trying his best, and she's like, you're tearing yourself down. Are you trying to be Batman? Like that's the last thing he wants to hear. That like one, you're inadequate, and two, you're not doing what's best for you. You're trying to be somebody else, like Batman. Like that's a really like yeah. That's probably the one thing you can say to Nightwing that would just completely unnerve him. Um, and I don't think that she's saying that for any other point other than to like have him flare up and listen to her. But I don't think that that's like a wholly calculated move because he'll be more inclined to probably not.
Hmm. Well, when in this one bubble, he says the haven is all on me, just me, and if it needs 24/7 attention, then I'm the only one in position to know that that's my call to make. So he is saying Bruce-like things. So I feel like it's not a leap, but I do understand that if she knew that that was a button to press and she did it intentionally, then that's wrong. But shouldn't that also be a concern? Like you don't want your loved one to turn into Bruce Wayne to Batman.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that like she shouldn't have done that, but I'm not saying that like like it was like the nicest thing for her to do either. Is it? But that's what makes characters fun. They can be not nice.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of reminds me, and this is a bit of a loaded point because I know you're gonna react, but when Batgirl 25, when uh to go off and fight Shiva, cast paralyzed Barbara,
Oh my gosh.
and you really took offense to that.
Yes, I
Um,
did.
and I said that's a very cogent point. But Barbara was also like, "Hey, look at this, your origin story. Maybe you want to stop." I think these I think the Bat family, straight up, our favorite characters have a history of kind of throwing low blows at each other to like get them to listen to each other.
Yeah.
Because I like that bit where like uh where Dick says, "Oh, Tarantula, doesn't know she's reckless. She doesn't know what super secret identity is for." And Barbara's like, "Do you?" And Dick is like, "Excuse me, no, excuse me. What did you say? Like, did you just ask if I know what secret identity is for?" Like he's like,
Yeah.
are you being for real?" And she's like, "Are you?" Because like you had like an action scene in public. With the vigilante, like and that's kind of like which I think is I like that quite a bit because consider their history. I mean, Dick was a crime fighter before she was, so that's also a bit of like sort of a professional slight. He's like, "Come on, who do you think you're talking to?" But like, she's like, "Listen, man, you're like, you're just like going nuts and being very incredibly reckless. You're getting shot all the time." Um, I mean, it's weird because like I feel that like I what I'm doing is trying to like explain both of their sides. I feel that it's very evident in the issue. And it's just a good job of two characters not communicating the best way, but also being very clear with what their own perspective is.
Yeah, and I'm gonna defend my girl as much as possible, but
Yeah,
however
you are.
much of how much of a low blow that was, I think you're right that you have to do maybe you didn't say this because I'm putting words in your mouth. But the fact that she has been pretty kindly and gently prodding him to pull back a bit and take care of himself and all. But after you are saying this multiple times and they're not listening, then you need to go to the extreme and be like, listen, do not be da da da. And then hopefully they'll listen apart from their anger. But here
Don't
again,
you dare! Not one word about the past. Are you even listening to me?
yeah, I was even gonna say that was the previous issue. She said, "You're stuck in the past with me," and then this happens again. She does ask him, "Why do you love me?" And then his explanation, "Babs, you're stunning and you're brilliant and you're probably the strongest person I know. Inside where it really counts. One look at you and my heart catches in my throat. My body flushes with heat. I've always loved you. All the best parts of my life, you were there, and I'd do anything to protect that connection, to protect you." Any thoughts? Do you feel like that's a romantic overture?
Well, I mean, as the resident female of the podcast, I feel that like you should probably answer that question first.
No, no, I feel like he says all the right things there. And I mean, it comes from his heart and he didn't rush into it. I think that there was that delay and he did think about everything. But I do wonder about that, all the best parts. of my life you were there. So there is that past. But so
Batman family.
and are you, oh yeah, I know. And are you able to separate that, from the person? Like if you're having a fun time and that person's there, are you just going to assume that, oh, it must have been because you were there that I had this fun time? Or is it, yeah.
I like the fact that they are ostensibly out on a date
Hmm.
in their normal civvies and they break up. It's not like, how many times have we seen, depending on who the characters are, like on a rooftop and someone walks off and the person just like looks down at their shoes,
Yeah.
we're over or whatever. Where it's just like, this is how it should be done. Devin Grayson just nails it. Like, it's a regular breakup. And the weirdness of it is Tarantula staring at them way,
I
way far
know.
as the superhero, the comic book element of it. But like,
Yeah.
and to kind of answer your actual question, like, it is very romantic, but he is still. I don't even think that Dick personally is stuck on it. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think that Barbara sees that, like, oh, all he cares about is Batgirl. I don't think that's true. But he can't help but kind of like reference it in a way that like is not doing anything any favors at that moment. So she's like, oh, he's still stuck on the past. This is not good for either of us. The smart thing to do is to break up.
Do you
Because
think,
because
yeah,
if you imagine real quick, I keep on doing that. I'm sorry, but like, when she was shot and she eventually became Oracle, he was with the Titans. So it's not like he was with her all the time in her adult life.
mm-hmm,
So that might even be hard for her to buy in that moment in time.
yeah. Do you think that she uh can Tarantula actually boast that she made Oracle dump Dick?
Tarantula is kind of a she's not a very good person, so I think she
She's
would
a
take
witch with
credit
a
when it's
bee, is
not
that
due.
what you're trying to say?
That is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think Devin Grayson would not disagree with me. Um, she's written very intentionally.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that like Tarantula is taking credit for something that like was sort of a happy accident in her favor. Like,
Yeah.
because like it's not manipulation. They're not being brainwashed. It's like, I made her dump him. That's like, that's a lucky hand. That's not any active interference on her part. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then of course we have this end scene where suggestion is to make peace or fight for it. So I guess we'll see what he ends up doing in the next couple
Oh,
issues. But
we will
yeah,
see about that.
I know. Well, at least in modern comics, I can still have some Dick and Babs happening. So
Yeah, I think as we record, I believe Nightwing drops tomorrow. Am I right about that?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure to read it.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the main event, Batgirl 45 through 48. And fair warning, if any 10s out of 10s are given, someone will not make it through the night. Someone will not
What
make it
about
through.
the fact that she won the 2002 Wizard Fan Award for Best Heroine? Doesn't that count for any high grades?
I swear. If you give it 10 out of 10, someone will not make it through the night. Yeah, I have your mom on speed dial. So,
Oh, don't do that.
ma'am, could you
Well,
put, yeah. Okay, so Donovan I told him that if he's coming on, that he needs to do the synopses for these, which has helped me out a great deal. Thank you, because I had lots of grad work to do. So please let us begin with Batgirl 45.
Batgirl 45, issue 45, written by Dylan Horrocks, art by Rick Leonardi, I'm sorry, and Jesse Delberdang, an inker I've seen a lot in this era of DC Comics. So this issue sees Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, uh, swing into a scene where a guy is throwing a car. He has superhuman strength, and while she knocks him out with a pressure point, the guy's girlfriend, who's also high on a similar drug the guy was taking, looks at Batgirl's mask. Oh, your eyes, they're so cold and empty. No life, no love, no soul. And she could be high. But also, I mean, like, this kind of like hurts Cassandra's feelings because even though she's wearing a soulless mask, she doesn't know what that means, but she knows that it's another thing that she lacks that other people have. So come back to the clock tower where she sneaks up on Oracle and says, Oracle, what is a soul? And Barbara's like, that's a pretty heavy question. Let me get back to you. How was your vacation with Batman? She's like, fine. So they have one of their characteristic meal conversations, which is pretty traditional in this run. And Oracle says, Bruce made me cry a lot when I was Batgirl, and that made me think of Stella. And so Cassandra,
I wonder why. Because he's a jerk.
Yeah. And so Cassandra is like, and not in so many words, how was it like when you were Batgirl? And Oracle kind of describes like what the takeaway from this description, and there's so many things she could have said, but she kind of talks about how fabulous she was and how all the guys are crazy about her. And she gets into how Robin looked at her and her costume and such, even in ways that he wasn't aware of, and how dazzling she was. And it's basically a kind of a youthful nostalgia for being Batgirl, how full of life she was. And she shows Cassandra her old costume, the gray and yellow suit. It's always like the black and yellow suit, which she apparently kind of keeps in her closet, which we've seen other characters do before, like Tim and Dick. So she's like, all right, I have some work to do, so have fun with this. Cassandra goes back to her headquarters, her little bat cave, and she tackles Alfred because she's not really thought about who cleans her room up, and it's been Alfred. Alfred says, hey, don't be so hard on the master. He just worries about you. We all do. And she's like, yeah, well, I'm just tired. So we cut to her workout sort of computer area where she looks up images of Barbara as Batgirl, and she kind of zeroes in on how Batgirl looked. And as that scene closes up on the Batgirl insignia, the yellow bat, we smash cut to Batgirl flying in the air, but it's a fusion of the original Batgirl's costume with Cassandra Cain in the cowl. And this is awesome. So Batgirl happens upon a mugging. She's about to take these guys out when she trips on the high heels of the yellow boots. She managed to take them down anyway. She swings across the city and finds a riot scene where Robin is trying to take control and saves him from some oncoming violence and lands on top of him. Tim is like, Batgirl, that's a nice costume. No way. Is that Barbara's old suit? Wow, I'm not complaining. It really suits you. And then he's thankfully shut up by being knocked unconscious. Cass saves his butt. And when he comes to, he finds out that the people were rioting because they were basically high on the new designer drug on the streets called Soul, which is the same drug that the people were on earlier in the issue. So Cass takes a pill sample of that as Robin swings away. And she goes back to Oracle and apologizes that she got her suit roughed up. And Barbara says, you can keep this if you want to. But Cass is like, no. And she says, well, I wish I could have seen what she looked like. You would have knocked him dead. And she says, hey, I've been thinking about what you asked about having a soul, or what is a soul. At the end of the day, when you close the door and you're all alone, and you strip off your armor and lower your guard and peel away the mask, when there's nobody watching, there's just you. That's it. That's a soul. But did Cassandra hear that? Who knows, because she's fast asleep once again. And that is Batgirl 45.
Thank you. Let us begin at the beginning with the cover.
Oh, yes.
Where a bit of a misleading cover because it does in fact show the black and yellow instead of the gray and yellow. But Cass in the classic Barbara Gordon Batgirl suit beating up a guy, and this style, kind of painted style, will repeat itself through, I think, all 4 of the issues that we do. But yeah, thoughts on this? Beating up a guy with glasses.
Oh, I love this cover. Well, David didn't try anything about that. Like, this is an awesome cover. So, I mean, some of these covers are some of the best of the series. The colors really pop. I like the color design of this suit, and I wish it was more. I'm more attracted to the darker colored Batgirl suit than the kind of the gray and blue one. I mean, I like the gray and blue one, but I just like the color combination of this. I almost wish that this cover artist did the interiors. No, this is like a poster worthy cover. I mean, the cover, I will say, not to bury the lead, I would not give this issue a 10 out of 10,
Thank
but I would give this
heavens.
cover a 10 out of 10.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I can see that as well. The artist here reminds me of there's a Jinx World book called Pearl that I read, and that's by Brian Michael Bendis, but I can't remember who the artist is with him, but it feels the same. It'd be funny if it was actually the same. I feel like the gray and yellow is my favorite. I think Don knows this, but I don't know that I've necessarily talked about it on the show very much. But this one I think suits Cass, if only because we're
Mhm.
used to her wearing black. So it's like a nice transitional piece, I think, for her to go from hers modern to traditional, but we've got that black connection there. So yeah, I agree with that. And then you have the circles in behind her representing the pill, the drug soul, because there are the sad and then the happy sides, but they only show the sad side here. I am surprised that this is something that she's not that Bab's such a thinker. It hasn't really considered, what a soul is, or hasn't, doesn't necessarily have a ready answer, or would think about it and then have a discussion, and then it takes the whole issue for that to happen. Do you have any thought? Do you feel like I'm giving her too much credit that she's been thinking about what a soul is?
Um, I mean, Barbara's a pretty she keeps herself busy all the time, which isn't to suggest that she's not an intellectual person, but I'm not sure how philosophical Barbara would be if that would be closer to consideration of a soul, or just is it epistemology or
Epistemology is
epistemology?
that's
It
about letters.
Yeah, I thought that was wrong. Just sort of kind of considering one's own existence.
Mhm.
I'm sure she has thoughts, but I don't know if that's something that she would have like studied. So it doesn't strike me as off that she didn't have a whole, here's my take ready to go at a moment's notice.
I just realized how long Cass's ears are in this issue. I it It's interesting because I did that special with Sam Heath on all those essays in politics in Gotham, and we did discuss religion or the lack thereof, because I think the idea was that, if I'm correct, that essay was that media is basically the religion for Gothamites because they're so tuned to that. And this is another example where we've got prime pickings to, like, have some sort of philosophical or religious, theological discussion on a soul, and we don't necessarily get there. Though we do, which is something I have a problem with in a later issue, which we'll cover, we have some religious imagery. So I don't I guess people are scared to do it in comics, to talk about it, and maybe it's for the best that they don't, because I think it often turns out as kind of the stereotypical, Christians are they're no good because they're just very hateful. So I guess if maybe it's best we don't put them in there, because that's what everyone thinks. But yeah, I think there was just a really good opportunity to have a discussion, and we unfortunately didn't get there. But I do like Barbara's sort of stripped down version of who you are. This is what your soul is, which, if Cass weren't sleeping, that would have been an interesting discussion, because what does Cass think her stripped down version is? Is her soul, consistent? Is her idea of her soul tainted with what she did as a child? Has she ever gotten over that? Will she ever get over that?
I mean, I think that like that's definitely her fear,
Yeah.
and I think that like I mean, as far as I've ever seen, when she's especially when she's written correctly, Cassandra has not really gotten past that guilt. I think she's gotten past her death wish after issue 25, but the guilt has always been there.
Now, I don't know if it's hypocrisy, but
Okay.
what is what's the difference between Dick talking to Barbara about the past and Cass talking to Barbara about the past?
Well, because Cass wasn't there, and she wasn't like, you were so awesome, weren't you? That's why I love you now because of what you were. Like she's just like, what was it like for you when you were Batgirl? Me, the Batgirl now. Like that has a completely different
Mm.
perspective. That's not really like that has, why would she get mad about that? So like,
Just that,
yeah,
well, I don't know. I'm just,
it's more innocent.
is Barbara having trouble with the past, or yeah. So she is just asking for from a perspective that is completely third party and non-interested. If I could remember the Amanda Bynes line and she's the man, I would spit that out. But yes, I personally don't like her interpretation of what Batgirl
I knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't.
like,
I knew
okay.
good
And
damn well you would not.
I feel like this has happened before quite recently where I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this is not why she joined up. Didn't I just cover something where she's like, it was all about the thrills for me and having fun? Like, that's
Well, in
not, you might
fairness,
have been having
that's
fun,
not
but
like what she says. I don't think that she's like describing like it was just me at a disco while dancing until I got shot. I think it's just I think that this is a side of her that she is thinking about in the moment. I don't
mhm.
think this is an all encompassing. This is what it was like when I was Batgirl. She kind of just like in that moment, it was really cool, and I think that that's true. I think that like it can be problematic in a way because you don't want. I think because again, like, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before on Batgirl Oracle that like a lot of the post crisis sort of like reminiscing of Batgirl is very much comic book fanboys as writers writing their adolescent memories of Yvonne Craig and how that reflected upon their perception rather than her running for Congress and all that kind of stuff. You see him reflected. I'm not sure if that's precisely true of Dylan Horrocks because I don't really know him very well, but like I think that's the kind of the consistent through line.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think that's I don't think that we can never have an issue of Barbara saying I was really sexy when I was Batgirl and that was cool. I don't think that that's I don't think for an issue that's out of bounds, but I do understand that that's I don't want to say more often than not, but often enough sort of a crutch that writers go to because it's less of a character insight and more of a writer fan insight.
And I also think know your audience on Barbara's part because that's not something that would necessarily interest Cass because you know that she's uncomfortable with with objectification because that whole arc we dealt with. But I feel like there
Yeah.
was something else that she could have connected with Cass on being Batgirl. So that's I'm surprised that you would lean into that. And of course it ties into, which I just thought was really gross, to be honest, Tim objectifying her and all this stuff. And
Oh,
then
Tim's
there's
horrifically out of character in this.
I
He is
know.
horribly out of character in
That's what I
this.
thought. And then this scene here where she's like straddling him, like, why are we doing this to these characters right now?
And he says, "Phew!" Like he like has like
Oh
a
my
word balloon of relief. It's like,
gosh.
okay, I've read too many Dojin to know what that means.
Yes. Um, I did think this was shocking that Cass wouldn't realize that it was Alfred, right? Oh, you know,
I love that.
she just tackles him. She didn't look first. I was a bit surprised about that.
I'm shocked
Okay,
that Alfred has hair.
he does
He's
have
not
a
bald
lot
in
of
this.
hair. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he's trying something out, a toupee or something like that. Okay, here we get. We're getting to the crux of this. Capital B, betrayal, I believe. Let's get to it. Betrayal. Okay. So Cass neither asked permission to take the costume, nor did she ask permission to wear it. Defend Cass right now.
Oh, come on. Really?
You knew this is going to happen when you came on here.
Maybe I should have like I don't know. I mean, like if Barbara just like keeps the thing in a closet and like, oh, here you
This
go.
is also shocking.
How how upset? I mean, yes, she's when she it was one thing for her. I will say this: it's interesting for her to like be upset at Helena Bertinelli wearing quite literally a completely different costume and calling herself Batgirl and be mad at that. But seeing the actual currently Batgirl literally wear her old suit and like, oh, I wish I would have seen you in that. Like that is an interesting sort of like reverse reaction or opposite reaction. But I don't I I think that Barbara really likes Cassandra as Batgirl, and I don't really see her like throwing a fit about this. I mean, by the end of this issue, she's like, "Oh, she could have seen." Like, she's not upset about it. So I don't think that like lies. I mean, Cassandra, she lacks social cues, so she could have said, "Hey, can I borrow this?" And she didn't. But like, when you say this was a betrayal, whatever, I don't care.
Well, I think the fact that she allows Cass to have that moniker goes a long way, and so I think there are a lot of allowances that Barbara gives her, and she has given Cass permission to be Batgirl. So I still consider it a betrayal, but yes, we can
Of
also
course you do.
say that, Cass is not 100% up on the social cues. But also, I thought it was very strange that it's in a shoebox in the closet. That seems odd.
That is very odd. Like there was an issue of Nightwing in the Chuck Dixon run where he kept like, I think his Robin suit and like his first two Nightwing costumes on a hanger in the closet, and that's an artist detail. I don't think that like the writer wrote that in there. I would hope not, but that's still very bizarre.
Mhm.
So it's I would agree that that's weird. But I've seen that before, and these have different editors. I think that like I believe without checking that the editor for Batgirl in this era is different than the editor for Nightwing because it could have helped a bit continuity with Oracle. I mean, we'll get
Mhm.
more as the issues go on, but I'll concur with you. I don't think it's a big deal that she's wearing the suit, but I do think it's odd that Oracle is kind of like really careless with it.
Yeah, and when I see someone put something in a shoebox and hide it in the closet, I think that that's like you're really trying to distance yourself from this part of yourself. I didn't know if I want to use the reflexive pronoun twice in one sentence, but I did.
Hmm.
And we're compared to, Bruce's memorials almost or y- ho- those cases that he has with them.
Right. And
But
I've inconsistently seen the Batgirl suit in those. I actually don't like that because it's not the animated series. There's a reason why Jason's suit is there. I would rather at least on display. If they're gonna have like a little area for the suits, I would rather that not be out in the open alongside Jason's murdered costume. So when she says I would like to keep it rather than give it to Bruce's creepy museum, like that to me tracks.
mhm. I will say though that this is, I think, karma for the betrayal of taking a costume without asking, is that her heel broke. So she couldn't handle it. Too bad that the weapons purse isn't on that. That would have been funny. Like, what's this? Asking
That would
without.
have been good.
Uh Question, what does Bads's costume do for Cass besides the obvious, of course? So if we skip away from this sort of sexual sexual weirdness that goes on here, what do you think it does for her? Why put it on and what does she get out of it?
I was actually thinking about that because I feel that like it's. I remember this issue as sort of the just sort of like like the substance and this kind of like the pull quote of in this issue Cassandra Cain wears the original Batgirl suit, which is interesting enough. But what's the point of it, and what does that have to do with the concept of soul? I think when a woman is looking at her mask and you can't see anything, that's different than when somebody looks at you and you can see your facial expressions, but she's not used. I mean, oftentimes she doesn't wear her mask, but like when typically not used to.
Mhm.
And I think that like the way that like Barbara describes being Batgirl and how people react to her, it's something she wants to experience. Like maybe this is she kind of feels it's that kind of like characteristic like subtle Batgirl series storytelling, but like she feels that like maybe this is shortening the distance between me and a soul by being a little more visible and fighting crime. But it's a visibility that she ends up not being comfortable with. And I think that like Rick Leonardi is an artist that I don't like as much as others. I don't dislike him. I actually like him in his DC work better than like his earlier Marvel work. Like I never really liked his Spider-Man stuff. Because I know he did Spider-Man 2099. Um, it's good that like the artwork isn't gratuitous. Like I don't think that like it's all that. This isn't Ed Benes on Birds of Prey doing this, which would have been unimaginable. Um,
Yeah, there's only
but
one butt shot right here.
sure. and it's a butt. Well, speaking personally, it's a butt shot I wouldn't have really thought about because, like, it's time for action. It's not like the whole thing. Like, there's other focuses in the panel, but yeah, sure. Um, but I think that like it's interesting. It's an interesting commentary on people reacting, like people just reacting to that costume, that image of Batgirl, and like she's hot. I think that's more like I remember talking about this before. There is definitely like like Batgirl is a sexy hero that strikes a chord with some people. I don't know how it feels that this is a bit more meta than I think DC even itself was really being with the original Batgirl. And I'm not sure how well I found it to be a little confusing with the artwork, which doesn't really accentuate that. I get the point coming across, but it's a point that's a little obscured. Uh, so for what it does for Cassandra, I think I get it. It's her. Like, if I'm wearing a suit that's less ghastly, then maybe I will be seen differently, and I can find my soul that way. But in terms of like what the story is saying about that, it's not. It's a little obscure. I think is what I want to kind of come down on it.
Well, it's very costume cut-ups. It's very that issue
Oh
where,
yeah.
Barbara in that issue leans into the fact that, yeah, they see her as a woman, and so they underestimate her for that, and so she's gonna do all these purposeful faux pas and get the guys kind of going gaga. And even though Cass isn't purposely doing that, the heel breaking and all, yeah, it's really interesting. I think part of it is obviously that reaction that the drugged out lady had towards her appearance, and I also think that Cass does not have fun at this. I think there probably was a time that she had fun being Batgirl, but she's been in a pretty as we'll see, it'll reach ahead, but it's been not the greatest of times for her. She in Tarek, that was not a good situation for her. And so I think maybe hearing Barbara speak so positively of her time and maybe her assuming that, well, one of those reasons she must have had a fun time is because of this costume, that, oh, maybe I'll have fun and maybe it'll be a more positive experience as well. But she also doesn't like being objectified, and that's not who she is. So she is just, yeah, someone in particular. Okay, I think that's it for me. Out of 10 broken heels, what would you give Batgirl 45, unless you have anything else that you would like to say?
I just feel like I think the last thing I know is that like it's a little annoying how Tim is written, because you can have the fact that like Tim finds her just naturally attractive, or he sees her in a different way in that suit, but he's so like Daffy Duck, like yeah, like about it, that that's just not, that's not Tim Drake at all. Like, I can see this being written where like he's like, Cass, is that you? And then he just gets knocked out. And like, he like, it's maybe like one of the comment. He doesn't like, he's like, he can't shut up in this story. It's like, this is just not, this is where I wish the editors were, by this time, Daniel Neal's off the book. So editorial consistency is lesser. But that's really all I have to say about it. Out of 10 broken
Broken
heels,
heels, yeah.
uh, there's a lot to really to actually criticize about this issue. I'll throw my hands up and admit that. And I think that like in the way it's trying to do, there's quite a bit of fails on it. But I've always liked it, so it's tough for me to like wag my finger on it too much. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 high heels, because I really do enjoy it despite everything else.
Broken heels, you fool. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10, just because I didn't like how Barbara portrays her or reminisces about her previous time as Batgirl, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think if she were talking to Dinah, I will allow it, but not, I don't think Cass. I don't think that's going to strike a chord with her.
Not
And
her daughter.
the betrayal, yeah, I know. The betrayals, that it hits me.
You really,
And
you really did like that.
I don't like people taking my things, so why would she like that? But
Such a fangirl.
I know. Okay. Well, let's move on to Batgirl 46. Here's some religious imagery. I think I have a question on this. Okay. And I
I
will
love it.
call my girl out about something in this issue, but luckily she does the right thing. But please go on.
Batgirl 46, once again by Horrocks Leonardi and Delperdang, with an equally eye-catching poster. I actually think I might have this somewhere. I've gotten it at Comic-Con. It says heaven nor hell. And we see, like, for those who are listening to the podcast, we were seeing an angelic angel winged white Batgirl costume uh in parallel to a more traditional Batgirl costume with horns, a trident, and a tail. And it's cool. This issue opens up with a drug deal and a girl trying to get a hit off the new drug which this last issue sold. The guy says it's only $2,000, and then Batgirl intervenes and beats the guy up. But then she sees a wall where you see spray painted "The Lost Girl," which is the title of the issue. So Cassandra goes back to Oracle's clock tower, and she sees Barbara crying on the windowsill, and the CW music plays. And Cassandra's like, "What's wrong?" And Oracle's like, "Nothing, I'm fine." And, like, there's tears on her face. Something's happened to you, something bad. And Oracle's like, "What do you want?" And so she kind of copied down what she saw on the graffitied wall, and we hear, "Oh, Cass, we really must teach you to read." So Oracle tells her that the Lost Girls, rumor has it that they are led by Sunny Love, the former girlfriend of a gangster called Marty Switchblade Morse. Apparently, Sunny dumped her man and set him up on her own. Good luck. And so Cass keeps on pressing, and Cassandra gets it in one. Nightwing. Something's happened with Nightwing. He's hurt you? Dick and I are finished. It's over. And I don't want to talk about it. Just go. Ooh, child. So we cut to this Switchblade's whereabouts where Batgirl's like threatening him. And he says, Sonny don't want nothing to do with me no more. She's filling other chicks' heads with some man-hate garbage and bustling on my market share. It's disgusting. It's disrespectful. Downright unnatural. So we learned that this Sunny Love has kind of cornered the market on the soul drug trade. And she's leading her felonious feminists, shall we say, in terms of, we shall take over Gotham once we have all control of all the supplies of soul, which we're currently running out of. Just when they discuss how they're going to get some more. One of her girls has like a telekinetic and telepathic powers and senses the arrival of the Batgirl. So Batgirl characteristically beats up all the armed women, including one with a machine gun, knocks her out like without even looking at her, which is based. And they're like, well, what do we have? One of Gotham's ubiquitous bat people. And what's your name, honey? Butch leather bat chick, bat fetish babe. And when Cassandra says Batgirl. Batgirl, can't argue with the tag like that, right, girls? But the creepy bondage face mask, $100 says that was your boyfriend's idea. So she commands one of her girls, Faith, to liberate her from the symbol of oppression, and Batgirl's mask disappears. Zoinks! And also, there's another henchwoman who has powers of super strength, which knocks Cass into the vat of soul, which some of the pills she accidentally swallows. And so it's like, uh-oh, what's it going to do to her? And then we get the mushroom episode of Cowboy Bebop equivalency, because pack your bags, because Batgirl's about to go on a trip. And so she starts seeing her opponents as big-eyed anime characters and gets beaten up. And as she takes some kicks into the ribs, she sees Kevin Conroy, Batman the Animated Series Batman, yelling at her in dialogue clearly written by Stella. That was pathetic. How could you let a kick like that get through? You're weak, Batgirl. You're turning soft. And so she sees visions of her daddies, Batman and David Kane, berate her lack of skills. And then the saintly vision of Oracle kind of rolls into frame. Oh, leave her alone. Can't you see what she really needs is love and affection? Poor little baby. Because they're just being tortured by the supporting characters of the Bat family. She sees visions of Robin saying how love and affection is right. You should have seen this girl in Batman's own costume. She was hot, dude. And then she sees Nightwing admonish her because she's a loser who can't read. And then Superboy shows up. Who needs to read with a body like that? What a piece of it. And Batman threatens him, and Oracle says all she needs is love, and Cassandra's like just like freaking out, like leave me alone. And the villains are just watching this happen. It's like what is this? What's going on? Meanwhile, the radio receiver in Batgirl's cowl is going off because Oracle's trying to reach her. And so she's like, okay, she needs help. So she runs down her closest companions. She signals Batman, who's in the middle of a fight, and he says, Batgirl's communicator is on, but she's not answering. He says, I'm a little bit busy. See if Robin's available. Robin is being tied up by, is it Caraxis? I'm not positive what's going on there. It reminds, because that happened with him and Caraxis at one point, but no, whatever. So he's tied up. He suggests Nightwing. Oracle's like, yeah, right. So eagle-eyed listeners of Batgirl Oracle and readers of Birds of Prey will remember that in the last storyline, or the most recent one, Dinah Lance got her legs broken. So we cut to Dinah Lance, still recovering with her legs in cast, who says, "Are you kidding?" It's and so there's this awesome 2-panel shot of Barbara reaching for the mouse to click Nightwing's call number, and kind of like groaning as she does it, which is great. So Cassandra's still getting beaten up and being called a geek, and the hallucinations of the Bat family still persist in torturing her, and they kind of fade off to a devil and angelic visions of herself, arguing that Batman just wants another soldier for his war. Oracle is trying to relive her lost youth. But the angel Cassandra is like, no, she's a good person. You know, she must do what's right. She's good. And basically it's the idea that we're talking about where, like, you know, her self-image is so bifurcated that they're warring with each other. There's a blazing inferno of rage inside you, Cass. She calls herself Cass. You've been bottling up for years, terrified of letting it out. But you and I know there's no one else on Earth with as much right to feel angry. And so she goes berserk. He goes, ah! And attacks all of them. And we cut to Nightwing outside the warehouse on the top of the glass ceiling. He says, all right, Oracle, I'm here. Batgirl's here, but I see her and everyone's unconscious. So she goes over there. Batgirl, are you okay? It's me, Nightwing. And Batgirl steps to, you, oh man! And just kicks him out of the window. And Dick's like rubbing his face. What was that about? And that was Batgirl 46.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, we will get to that, of course. We will get to that. With this drug description, I wondered if you thought that it was particular to sorry, actually, just to talk about this cover. I found it very interesting. We'll get into the religious imagery, but didn't she at one point wear white in the Gail Simone Volume 2 Birds of Prey? Or am I just confusing her with White Canary?
I think that was just White Canary, who was not. I remember at the time people thought it might have been Cassandra, but it wasn't.
No.
The only other identity she had was Kasumi in the Justice League Elite run, which I read, and that's a totally different costume. So I don't think that she's ever worn something like this.
Okay. It is, yeah, pretty. It's a stark contrast, obviously. So very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So we talk about this soul here.
Do you like the cover?
I do like the cover.
You don't think it's a betrayal?
Why would I think it's a betrayal?
I don't know. I'm just trying to second guess you.
I'll let you know when it's I just noticed that the heaven and the hell have these little swoopy things, and one is the happy soul pill and one is the sad soul pill.
Oh, I didn't notice that either. Yeah.
No, it's not necessarily a betrayal. I mean, once we get to my question, maybe I'll say it was, but stop feeding betrayal. I already look and see it everywhere. I don't need you to make me more paranoid than I already am. But anyways,
on the vision in your head.
Yes. Soul is described as feeding off of, it seems like, who you really are to your core, your nature, and that if you're good, soul makes you feel like an angel, but if you're bad, either way, it's a hell of a trip. Do you feel like that's a pretty good or accurate description of all drugs, or do you think that this is just a description of soul? Do you think
I think you sound like an op right now.
an op
No, I would an
and
operative.
oh,
Trying to get me to incriminate
I'm
myself.
narking. No, I mean just like how drugs are portrayed in the media. That's what my only experience with it. Do you feel like I don't know, it heightens already who you are, or could it be the opposite? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's been described to me by somebody I trust that
Mhm.
when you're drunk and when you're drinking, you don't turn into somebody else. That's really who you are without inhibitions. And but I feel as though that drug, a narcotic, actively alters your mind. Well, it depends on the narcotic. So, like things like PCP and stuff can really just like mess you up. So I don't know if that's like an easy one way descriptor for all drugs. The drugs that can really kind of like reveal yourself, because drugs turn you into somebody very desperate for that kind of dopamine high.
Mhm.
So I don't really know. I mean, this is a fictional joke, but like it can have a lot of real world applications. I couldn't say for certain because I feel like it kind of depends on which one you're talking about. Like I don't think heroin would do that, or cocaine, because like cocaine is sort of like a stimulant. So I don't know.
Just wondered, yeah. And as we see, she's pretty desperate for it. Yeah, I've never been intoxicated, and so there are some friends of mine that would like to witness whatever that is, and I'm convinced that I'll be a really mean person. They don't believe it. I'm just like, I think I'll just be really belligerent. I'll start beating people up. I don't think you want to see it. They think I'll be like Stella, but ratcheted up, so I'll just be laughing a lot. I don't know. I don't think we should find
Oh
out,
my
in my
goodness,
opinion. I don't think we should find out.
I'm curious.
As are many people for some reason, some sick reason. Okay. I will say this lack of reading, we know that it's gonna hit ahead. Hit it's going to reach ahead. It's going to reach
Yeah,
some sort of, yeah, culmination, which turns out pretty bad and badly. Is it here? Oh, I will say though, now that I'm taking some literacy courses in order to get my master's degree, that I now understand that, reading is not biological. It does have to be taught. And even though she can speak, doesn't necessarily mean that she can read. So I'm learning so many things. So now, if we do any sort of learning or teaching scenes in this issue, I can kind of critique it and be like, yeah, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense. Okay. Do you think that it is too intuitive of Cass to know that Nightwing is the issue here with with the tearful Barbara? I mean, me personally, that I would immediately say, "What did Batjerk do this time?" But no, her
yeah,
first inclination is in fact Nightwing. Do you think this seems realistic that she is that intuitive?
yeah. Of course, like intuition is kind of like Cassandra's bread and butter. I mean, without actively being an empath, that was her training,
Mhm.
and we can kind of get into that with more reminded detail in the next issue. But absolutely, no, I buy it totally. Just knowing how he makes her feel. And I like that detail that she does click. I like that she's not like "Huh, what happened?" Like she figures it in one, which leads Barbara to react in the way she does. I really enjoy that.
This pill scene, I found a bit ridiculous, if only because I thought she's not in a drum barrel of water, she's in pills. Did she really swallow these? Are you okay with this, that she swallowed some accidentally?
I mean, it is one of those things where you have to like think, okay, how did she do that? But it's not impossible for me. If
Yeah.
it was sort of like maybe in like unrefined, so where it was sort of a liquid form, oh, it's uncut or it's pure. Like what will happen? Like that would be they could have written it that way, but it's fine as is. It's just they're like kind of little small gumballs. She actually swallowed one.
I guess so. At least she didn't. She swallowed, unfortunately, probably more than one.
Yeah.
which I'm surprised that Odin is not an issue. Okay, so these hallucinations. So I feel like, in my opinion, that she's already gone through moments of self-doubt. She's had dreams. She's had, I think, some more, hallucinations. Did we need to do this again? If so, why is her character back here?
I mean, she's not a subtle character. Um, her death wish was sort of resolved with the fight with Shiva, but like, she goes on. She and Batman have kind of have been having problems. She's been experiencing attraction from men recently, or boys. Um, there's plenty of insecurity she still has about her disability. Um, and I think that like how she sees Oracle in this way, like the kind of caricatures that they are. The way that Oracle's kind of caricature, and the way that in the way that she describes them. Oh, Batman just wants you to do this. Oracle just wants you to do that. I think is new to the book.
Hmm.
So when you say, "Oh, did we need it?" I think that's the wrong approach. It's not so much whether it's a question of need as it is a question of what, how would she react psychologically and emotionally, and what's really, you know, is there anything new underneath the surface that we need to be that we should be informed of? And I feel that like she's a very very like unpretentious character. So this is what's going to kind of come up and kind of like pull her apart, especially when it's not just Batman, Kane, and Oracle, but like, Superboy and Robin
Right.
as of recently, and Nightwing too. I think that adds more detail, and it kind of makes it harder with more characters than just two or three.
And unfortunately, there are some truths coming into these caricatures as well. Like, even though they're harassing her, I think there are deep down some truths that are coming out, and that she probably does envision some of this that way, which is unfortunate because of my girl Babs. Just that it seems so, oh, poor baby, just love and affection. But she honestly is she is the softer side of this duo with between Babs and Bruce. But I guess Cass just doesn't want to be babied like that.
There's one I love where Batman's like, "This is all your fault. If you hadn't made her so soft with all the talk of holidays and boys and love," like it made me laugh at like the idea that Batman would say that to Oracle, like you told her about holidays, like that just makes me laugh.
Oh boy. Okay. So I was getting a little upset at my girl here because I thought, we're getting ridiculous. You're calling everyone but Nightwing. You better call Nightwing. If you don't, then you're letting your personal issues encumber or mess
Endanger the
up
life of
your,
your ward.
yes, correct. But luckily she does, in fact. So I'm happy for that. Okay, so here we go. Devil, angel, these manifestations. Do you think it is realistic that she would have such religious manifestations, when I feel like she is unaware of such things? So where's this coming
That's
from?
a good that's actually a good observation. We know that Gail Simone, who's working at this point, I don't know when she would have done this, but she had an idea that Cassandra Cain would have fallen into. I believe it was the Christian religion, as sort of a fascination point, and the idea of redemption would really appeal to her.
Hmm.
I I don't think she would have thrown that at DC at this point because she was new to DC, I believe, or relatively new. Like I don't know if she would have had the stroke to try to get that across. But I mean, this is really kind of like the sort of comic book, just sort of like shorthand interpretation, right? So I think if you want to be strict with it, like this makes no sense. But at the same time, there's no reason why she couldn't have like been training in the Batcave and like seen that come on television, like sort of like a devil and angel personification in any kind of media. So she would have like learned about it colloquially that way. So it draws upon questioning where that comes from, if it's a bit more specific, and maybe it could have been like manifested in like even though it'd been interesting if it would have been like Shiva and Oracle, or like the devil and the angel,
Mm,
as her two adult mother figures, because like of course Shiva was trying to teach her in a way. She knows that, even though they had a death duel. that probably is not to like play armchair writer, but that probably would have been a lot more apt. But that doesn't mean that like yeah, so yeah, it's a bit cartoonish and simple, but like it's interesting that they did go for the sort of angel and devil thing, and I actually think that like because this I don't think that like the Horrocks run and the later on the Greybark run are as good as the Kelly Puckett run. Like I think there's a little fast and loose with like just how she like I don't think that Cassandra Cain calls herself Cass. Um, I don't think she thinks of herself in that way at all. But these are not really her thoughts. It's kind of well they are, but like it's these are kind of like manifested in sort of like these external ideas brought to her, even though they're really from beneath inside of her. So it's kind of I don't want to say it's all over the place, but it's working on this idea that these are basic representations of what's good and what's bad, and she always thinks that she's a bad person, and so this kind of communicating to the reader more so than herself, even though she should be doing communicating to herself.
Mhm. Yeah. I look forward to that when I read that issue that you're talking about, Gail Simone, because I do think, yeah, that Christianity and Jesus in particular would be a pretty attractive religion and person for Cass, given what we've seen and trying to save everyone and seeing good in everybody.
Oh
Okay.
no, it was never like it was never written. It was like it was a proposal that she
Oh.
had. Yeah,
Oh,
she's like,
oh, I see.
I had an idea for Cassandra Cain, and Danny Dio told me to f off or something like that. It never happened, but like
Okay.
she had the whole proposal for Cassandra Cain that would have involved that.
That's too bad. And of course, yeah, we'll just leave it here where you see the love that Cass has towards Babs and that she would take it out on Dick, which I find
It's so funny. It's
yeah.
so funny. You smash into him. Find
What a
the
quick two-panel interaction or confrontation.
oh
One of the
man,
questions.
I'll never forget when I first read that. I howled.
Any other thoughts on this?
I really enjoy this issue.
Okay.
Um, and which is probably why. I mean, it's not just this, but like I think because they like the whole Black Winds,
Mm.
Tower Kasan thing. Like the arc of that was so bad, and it got in the way of storytelling. Like you talked about how odd, to say the very least, it was that Oracle gave her that bikini and stuff, and like I think that this run is getting better with these issues. Um, and so I think this is a particularly interesting build up towards the issues that we're kind of going into.
Yeah.
So and this is what I really enjoy.
What would you give it out of 10 pill dives?
Out of 10, I'll give it an 8.5.
Oh, okay. I'll give it an 8
I
out
almost
of
went
10
9, but
pill
I thought you were
dives.
gonna be mad. You give it an 8.
An 8, yeah. 8 out of 10 pill
Gotcha.
dives. Yep. I guess maybe this writer is more focused on Cass being a girl. I think a lot of these choices
Mhm.
come down to like, let's really focus on the fact that she's a girl. And that's not necessarily, I know that's part of her identity, but I think if I were to have a conversation with this fictional character, Cassandra Cain, and I asked her who she was or how she identified, I don't think that she would say girl first.
I think Cass is very. I don't think she's asexual. I think that like she displays like I think the whole thing with Superboy, was fine. It made sense because she's surrounded by a very hormonal group of people. So understanding affection in that way is like perfectly open to it, but it can't be conventional. Like I think that like there's an issue like later on the last run where she shows up to a party dressed kind of crazy, but I think that that made sense for her character. I think that tracked. It wasn't just nuts. So you got to do that. Like you can't do a story like, oh well, she's on a date with somebody. Like you have to actually have her. You have to kind of zero in and kind of like investigate how she feels about certain things rather than just presume she's some way. And I think that like when writers forget how removed from society she was as a kid, that's to the character's detriment. So you can do sort of normal things like girlhood stuff, but it has to be done in a less conventional way.
Yeah. And again, I think there was a missed opportunity. The fact that Barbara doesn't have any sort of conversations like this with Cass. She just forces a bikini on her. And then they kind of talk about objectification, but I'm like, have you had a sex talk and all this? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, let's move on to 47.
47 will be quick. The Dream House. Yeah, that's a bit quick. This issue is about Batgirl versus the Doll Man. The Doll Man is a serial killer in Gotham City who's been kidnapping and murdering supermodels or celebutantes and dressing them up as sort of like painted uh, dollhouse girls for some reason. Um, Batgirl is at the crime scene of the discovery of one of the bodies, and Batman shows up as well. Uh, Batman's like, "Hey, girl, like young lady, you've been avoiding me since Tarakstan. Are you gonna tell me why?" And then like, you don't see Batgirl's eyes because of the mask, but she's probably rolling her eyes. Um, uh, um, she asks who the latest victim is, and Batman says that's Vanya Vance. She's a model who's been missing for the last 2 weeks. Bruce Wayne and her dated. I'll take this case. So while Kaz is chilling in her little bat cave, the Gotham News Media talks to Professor Lewis Friedman, who is a linguist and author, and he talks about the killer's ciphers and such. And he's like, "Oh, people can make up all kinds of languages and even communicate with different languages." Why, I knew a girl who could communicate with just with body language. She could predict how you're feeling, but she was totally isolated. And Concentra's like, "Wait a minute, that sounds like me." While she's realizing that, Batman is hanging out with Oracle at the clock tower and says she's not on this case because her detective work isn't up to par yet. And besides, I don't really have a lot of faith in her these days. When we were out of town, she kept on disobeying me, and there's something going on with her and that Black Wind guy. And she's like, "Well, I mean, can you blame her after how you reacted with her seeing her with Superboy?" And yeah, but Superboy was just annoying. Black Wind was a terrorist. And so she's like, "Look, Bruce, she showed poor judgment. It's not only that, she even kicked Nightwing through a wall." And Barbara's like, "Did she really?" Hey, this is serious, Barbara. Okay, okay, okay. Well, I keep telling you that she's had a worse childhood than any of us. I can't imagine what it's like to be growing up with being raised by Kane. Maybe this her being Batgirl isn't such a good idea. We've thrown her into a life of violence. I don't know sometimes if we're helping her or adding to her abuse. So while Batman and Oracle are talking about that, we see a scene of much later on of Batgirl meeting Professor Friedman and unmasking herself to reveal that like she was the girl that he met years ago. And he says that like basically Kane got the idea to train her in the language of violence from him, almost as an experiment. And he's very deeply sorry that he contributed in ruining her life, but he gives her a clue to find the whereabouts of the doll man. So she goes to the scene of the last murder victim, goes down the sewers, finds the doll man's hideout, falls through the traps because she's still not a very good detective, finds the other kidnapped models, finds the doll man. He's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted a family. I didn't know that the last model needed medicine. It's not my fault." So she leads the victims out to safety. She saves them all. The doll man is taken to custody, and as Batman arrives at the scene, at the police scene, Batgirl is right behind him, once again silent, staring him down, saying, "Yeah, I solved it, and you didn't," and swings away. What a disrespectful child. Next issue, Dead the
Whoa.
Buried Dead.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see if she should have been fired or not. I will say though that Batman keeps using this word detective, but his definition of it, in my opinion, keeps fluctuating. So I feel like Cass obviously will never be one because he had this one definition where it's like in advance what's going to happen so you prevent things. That's being a detective. But now it's actually being a detective is how we would imagine being a detective of looking at clues and figuring things out. So until he comes down, it's like she is never meeting his standards because his standards keep changing, in my opinion.
I mean, you're right. I mean, I think what you're referring to originally is from the Puckett run, which is a different writer, but you're not wrong there either. I think that like he sees being a detective as multifaceted, and like certain situations call for certain specialities
Mhm. Mhm.
or specialties.
So here we have this cover, very creepy. I will
Hmm.
say very creepy, and I don't it's a creepy issue, so I guess it fits it. I don't know what to say about it necessarily. I mean, I think it's very well done. It's just
Yeah, it's an interesting graphic image.
yeah.
It's not as to me, it's not as striking as the previous two images because those are much more like Cassandra based.
Yeah.
Where here she's just like, ooh, I'm Batgirl. But like, yeah, it's not a bad image. It's just I think pales in comparison to engagement from the previous two.
Yeah. To begin, I guess nearly the beginning, what are your thoughts on this discussion between Babs and Bruce?
Oh, it's a classic Bruce. It's a classic mommy and daddy discussion. Like it's kind of like issue 23, I think, where Cassandra's working out for her fight against Shiva and Batgirl or Oracle and Batman were talking about the best way to raise her.
Mhm.
And in here, Batman is just like, like why won't she talk to me? And Oracle is like, I mean, she's dealing with boys right now, but also maybe this, because of her age, this isn't the right way to raise her, and kind of reintroducing that idea to Bruce.
I will admit I don't necessarily understand why Cass has trouble with Bruce right now. I feel like this is forced on us. I don't see it as very I don't see the
Organic.
seeds. Yes, yes, organic works. I was trying to look for something else, but that works. Um, I mean, they've had some of their scuffles, and yeah, they've disagreed on some things. And what went on in Terrakstan, that wasn't the easiest of situations. But I don't know why she's treating him like this. Do you have any insight? Is this just
Oh,
me and I'm not reading well?
well, from what I remember, he kind of like this whole like I don't like this kind of like pulling rank thing, which is a Superboy and then Black Wind. Like he doesn't like he's very protective of her interacting with like morally ambiguous characters, which Superboy isn't, but like Black Widow was a terrorist and stuff.
Mhm.
And she was talking to him on her own, and he was very much. I remember very specifically. He was like, like talk to her again, and I'll break you like a twig. So I think there's a genuine miscommunication between like the person that she understood and got to know, and the fact that he was a terrorist. And it's not. There's not really like they can't really see eye to eye on that. And because he sees her in such a linear way, he has trouble getting through to her in a way which she can connect with like she used to. Because originally, when it kind of just relied on skill and saving people and getting the job done, he called her perfect.
Mhm.
Now that there's actual human characteristics being involved, and she is kind of there. There's a sexuality kind of introduced with her and these like younger men. He doesn't know how to act. So
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because there's some hypocrisy there. I'm surprised you're not calling him out on it. That
oh, I would never.
he and now Selena's not really a terrorist, but she's up to no good sometimes. So there could have been a good discussion about that. That I too have an attraction towards someone, but you gotta do da 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 da. But he doesn't, unfortunately. Yeah, he sort of just lays
A lot
down
of
the
times,
line of
Batman really. Go ahead.
he's pulling those "I said no because I said so" kind of thing as a father.
Yeah, he is.
I do feel like there's some hypocrisy, even more hypocrisy because Cass disobeyed Bruce more than once and she hasn't yet been fired. So not sure what's going on. Poor Stephanie. My gosh. Just wanted to say that.
Is that
So
why? Is that your metric? Like okay, well, Stephanie got fired. I mean, Stephanie,
so did
has
Enchantress.
disobeyed. She disobeyed Batman a few times, but like the whole like, oh, why aren't they fired? It's because you're trying to defend her. Like, have you read those issues? Yeah. Oh no, I know you have, but like, in your reading.
Yes. Do I need to reread them? In my current reading, I'm beyond that now, aren't I?
No, because that is
Oh.
because you're not at War Games yet, and then like
Oh.
that's at War Games. I think that's like coming up
Ooh.
soon,
It's right
but not
before.
yet.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, it's a if you're gonna fire one person, you need to fire everybody who disagrees with you. And he
No.
does yes. You
Well,
need to stay consistent.
he sees more value in Cassandra than he does in Stephanie. I mean, I'm not
Oh,
even trying to be mean about that.
value.
I'm not even trying to be like, territorial or prejudicial, or like he does.
Mhm.
Like Stephanie, and I don't even think that he keeps the fact that she's Clemestra's daughter against her. I think it's just like, she is a girl from the suburbs who half the time is getting saved by Robin and doesn't really save the day, whereas Cassandra Cain is a perfect fighter trained by somebody that he knows with a dedication that he relates to. Like, of course, he would give Cassandra more chances than Stephanie. I mean, like, is it hypocritical? You know what? I don't know if it is, because like it follows his own line of reasoning.
Yeah, but he okay, this is not the 70 Brown podcast, but he has opportunities to train her and just like gives up and doesn't do it. If he trains Stephanie, Stephanie could she has potential to be, you know, close to Cass. I didn't say as good as because that might not happen, but she could be better. But he doesn't give her the chance. She's like, no, you're reckless. And here, Cass is described as reckless. He is well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but he basically
Yeah.
says the exact same thing about Cass that Steph came in and said that Bruce said about her. So I think it's hypocritical. I think he's a hateful human being, and let's just hope he and I never meet in a dark alley. I'll tell him what's what.
I think I, I think you have a checklist for, like, these are the reasons why we would make something hypocritical, and I couldn't read like, yes, it is. Check, check, check.
A rubric for hypocrisy for Batjerk, yes. Okay, so this David Kane situation, do you think that he was actually this calculating when it came to Cass, or was it really, which she didn't have that name at that point, or was it really just something that happened and then retroactively we get this explanation?
What are you saying, that like that like
Yeah, well, let me
um
rephrase. Do you think does this make sense that he was this calculating? He talked to a linguist, he decided to do this experiment. Or do you think, no, that was just the way he trained her, but now we've decided to retroactively add this explanation?
um that's a good question, actually, because there's a number of retcons with this, whether like the Cassandra's the only child which they retcon later on, whether she was kidnapped, or whether she was his daughter, which they've since answered. Um, I like the idea that like he was introduced to the idea to train a child from birth to communicate through language. I like that idea. Like, because Keynes is not. I mean, he's intelligent, but he's not somebody who's like Deathstroke, or somebody who's that brilliant. He's not a thug, but he's not like, I like this flashback concept. Um, so I don't think it's necessarily going against anything. I mean, I think you can still read this and then read the older issues and have it track. And he regretted how that he did that, like, at least in like the early issues of Batgirl. Like, he was like because like she ran away after she killed the first guy. So he's like, I introduced her to that bit too soon. So yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fine. Do you feel that? Did you read this and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this tracks, or how did you react to this?
Well, it works, but I just don't know if I ever saw David. I mean, David Kane's an intelligent man, but I didn't know that he'd be this. Like, I'm going to create this machine, and this machine is going to speak in whereas I just feel like it might have happened naturally, that he was only training her in fighting and wasn't training her in any other way, and so that's why she is the way she is.
What machine are you talking about?
I'm sorry.
You said machine?
Yes. Yes, he created a machine. Cass is a machine, a fighting machine.
I thought you were like
Yes.
he created like a technological hard steel. Like
No.
what?
No, he created her. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. No, I think that like he wanted the perfect fighter, the perfect trainee, essentially, the perfect daughter in that way, and understanding that this is how you could do it, he went after it.
Hmm. Do you think it's realistic that this doctor knows where the dollhouse is?
I mean, sure, it's convenient, isn't it?
It sure is, yeah. From what I can work out, his childhood sense of isolation has continued to adulthood and his response has been to develop a rich fantasy life centered on a secret imaginary world he calls Doll's House. This private sanctuary lies hidden from prying eyes, deep underground in a cave beneath the city.
I mean, it's a
So
comic book. What do
I
you want?
know, but if
What do
he
you want?
said like it must be in a place, dot dot dot, but he's like very specific. I thought, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And then of course, yeah, the end where Batman is there and they're just staring at each other. I thought, oh, he's gonna say something encouraging, but he didn't. So thank you for living up to my expectations, Batjerk.
Living down to your
I know, yes. Okay. So, and this is funny because of course I had a listener who said that I may have like put words into Batman's mouth. And obviously I call him Batjerk all the time. But I think this is my persona, especially when you're on. I just like to call him Batjerk to see how you react in the
that top right
hypocrisy.
panel must be how you imagine him in your mind's eye, like with his arms at his side, like
Always.
young lady.
Yeah, always. Yeah. So this is just Stella when it comes to Batman. Okay. Any other thoughts on this one?
No,
Okay. Out of 10 booby traps, what would you give it?
uh, about a 7.
Okay. I Speaking of those booby traps, I was pretty surprised that she was hitting all of them, but yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on this one. Say 7 out of 10 booby traps. And so here we finally get to it. Thank goodness we can
God,
wash our hands of her at last.
listen to you.
Okay, Batgirl 48, take it away, sir.
You might as well be dead. Batgirl 48, still written by Dylan Horrocks. We've got art by Jean-Jacques Zalewski, inked by Drew Grassi, still working, I believe. This issue starts off with a woman's baby being kidnapped by human traffickers, quickly in pursuit by the Batgirl. Um, Batgirl gives chase on the street, but eventually, because she kind of sucks at like really kind of focusing on getting these guys, she wasn't getting it shot in the chest. Although she gets shot a lot in this issue, I have to imagine like her suit's been like armor assistant because nothing goes through. So she's shot in the chest, and as she's flying on the ground, she gets a radio call from the clock tower. Batgirl, this is Oracle. Please respond. And then Batman leans in, and the receiver, give me that. Batgirl, this is Batman. This is direct order. Respond immediately. And so they're like, okay, she's still not talking to me. Do you think she's hurt? No, her movements have been in line with her usual behavior. She just won't talk. Yeah, this ain't new. It's been several weeks since she's spoken to me. So Bruce and Oracle have another conversation about how she's been, and he says, I've been thinking a lot of what you said about Batgirl, about Cassandra. You have? What did I say? You said you weren't sure we were either helping her or abusing her. And then she's like, "Oh well, I did me." And then he like throws himself upon Oracle's lap. You're right. Oh,
Oh.
I am. And as he's like openly, he doesn't, but like, he says, "Just like I used Dick, and I'm using Alfred and you and Jason, because Jason's still dead at this point." Uh, with some rather dramatic panels of Batman, like I thought Cassandra was just like me. She needed a mission to give her a life meaning, purpose for her to make up to the pain. At first, it seemed to work. She was loyal, dedicated. I think she was happy. But then things began to change. She's become disobedient, unstable, no longer tells us what to do. Maybe being Batgirl is doing her more harm than good. Why did I do it, Barbara? For her own sake or for mine? Bruce, I don't know, but let's not get carried away. This might be a delayed adolescence or something. I mean, she's 18 years old. You know how 18-year-olds were like. They hate their parents, right? And Batman's like, I wouldn't know. And while Oracle responds as though she's Dick Grayson mentioning the Joker, Batman just disappears. Um, so we cut to one of the traffickers who's in the hospital for his injuries, and Batgirl threatens him to give up the location of the other traffickers. She shows up to a warehouse where the main traffickers have already left with the child, so she threatens another trafficker and basically gives chase towards on a boat where there is a woman named Miss Driver who explains the situation to both the men, women, and children who all have been kidnapped, telling them that they'll be sold into sexual slavery and they'll be experimented on, and that if they don't get them in trouble, they'll have the best case scenario for survival, and there's nothing they can do. But one of her henchmen say, there's something chasing us. It's on the sonar, whatever it is. It's getting faster. And while this is happening, we see Batgirl's head bobbing out from underwater. She has a bat rope hooked to the boat. So she eventually flies onto the boat and has a fight scene with a lot of armed gunmen. At one point, the woman, Miss Driver, has a mother holding a baby, her head to a gun, and so Batgirl takes several more shots behind her, but then she is rescued by Batman, and we learned that like the Bat boat was giving chase towards the boat with Robin steering it. So we cut back to Cassandra's place, I believe it's Cassandra's hideout, and as Alfred is taping her ribs, get ready for this, Stella. You disobeyed me. I ordered you back to the clock tower, and you refused to respond. Cassandra tries to protest. I had to help them. If you'd bothered to respond to our calls, you'd known that Robin and I had been monitoring the situation for weeks. The boat was leading up to their base of operations, where we'd have captured enough of the top management to shut down the whole operation through North America. Your interference has set those plans back at least 6 months. Cassandra says, you used those people, those kids. Well, they were perfectly safe. Their freedom would come a few hours later. That's all. You used them. We had everything under control until you turned up. Your reckless intervention almost got yourself and those children killed. In the past few months, your behavior has become increasingly erratic and irresponsible. I don't care if this is some kind of delayed adolescence or teenage rebellion. The fact is, you become a danger to yourself and to others. This can't go on. I'm ordering you to stand down as Batgirl. But I've arranged for an apartment near Gotham University. Alfred will drive you there in a few minutes. Anything you need will be taken care of, and you will bring anything that you want, except this, her precious costume. And Cassandra starts to tear up. Why? I can't allow anyone to jeopardize the mission, Cassandra. Even you. I'm sorry. But you're and that is Batgirl 48.
Oh boy!
All right, this is what
Finally,
you've been waiting for this for
finally,
months.
he pulls the trigger. Man, her firing has been at least 48 issues coming. So
No, not that long. You've been playing her for months.
oh my gosh. Yeah, think of all the metahumans she's fought when she's been told not to fight. These dates she's been going on. Oh man, finally. Yeah, he couldn't be a hypocrite anymore. He said, I really have to do this now. Do you think he's actually sorry?
Yeah, because he loves her. Yeah, no. Like legit, like he doesn't want to do this, but like this reminds me a lot of. Do you remember in Death in the Family, in the first chapter, he's talking to Alfred, and he says Jason's not obeying me. He's reckless. He's violent. And Alfred says, yeah, when we were not looking, I've noticed him crying at images of his parents. And Batman's like, yeah, this is a bad idea. He can't be Robin anymore. And then Jason hears that and runs away. Do you remember that scene?
Vaguely, yeah. Did you freeze?
I have to be the responsible adult and put them out of harm's way. That's what, and yeah, she's jeopardizing the mission, the war on crime, but she's also jeopardizing herself. You can laugh about it all you want, but I think that this is a very, very good scene, even though it breaks my baby's heart.
Your baby's heart, yeah. Well, I guess even though he is a hypocrite, he was holding on so long, I think,
Yeah.
for her, and now it's just gotten past the point of, yeah, what he can actually allow. But crazy that, yeah, he fired his favorite or second favorite maybe if you think Dick is his favorite. So crazy. But it is also interesting, I think he uses basically the same verbiage for Steph and Cass's firing. So to sort of compare the two of them at this point is pretty interesting. Just the reckless behavior and your danger to yourself and the mission and all of that. Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. Just wanted to point out of all of that. So here we have might as well be dead, which is crazy that, if she thinks that yeah, being dead is better than being fired. But
Yeah.
this has given her life purpose. So yeah, we'll see what she's doing after this with Batgirl 49. And then we're on the boat there, and then we've got the Batman going on behind her. So got some hints. I'd say that it's nice. It's mysterious enough and direct enough to
Hmm.
understand what's going on there. Let's see here. I do wonder about this scene here where she's like skating on the road because I feel like this doesn't make sense. It makes sense when you might have some wheels on your shoes or if
Oh
you're on
yeah.
like a car door or something that would be giving you maybe less friction, but here it's just like how are her arms not ripped from her body because she's moving? And she keeps attaching herself to moving things because later on, of course, she attaches herself to the boat.
Well, we know that like the bat rope has like a decel line. This isn't Batgirl Year One. Like those cables are specifically designed so it won't rip off your limbs.
No, but her shoes aren't. I mean, they're going to be adding so much friction that I feel
No,
like
you're
she
exactly
should
yeah.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's you're exactly right. She should have some like Schumacher-esque wheels at the end of her boots.
Yeah. I also don't appreciate you bringing up Batgirl Year One because we know that Batjerk appears there heavily and he
What?
cuts Barbara's line and almost kills
Oh yeah.
her.
No, he saves her life because she screwed up because she was an
My gosh. This is why we can't have you on the show anymore. Okay. We found out that Cass is 18 now. So
Hmm.
I always like to point that out. When I feel like she was just 17 a few issues ago, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, I remember that like she was 17, uh, if not the start of her series, at least in No Man's Land, and then the Shiva Death Duel was like a year, like 1 year from now we'll fight. So she has to be at least 18 by this point.
Okay. So maybe, yeah, timeline. I feel like my next question was, what is going on with Cass? Is this out of nowhere? But we've I think chatted about that in the previous issue, so we probably don't need to do that.
You got to tell me what you think about this Oracle and Batman scene.
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially it's when she she flubs up because Dick flubbed up in that issue where he mentions Joker and then she says about parents and then it's like ooh, the parents and everything. Well, it's interesting that she doesn't recall what did I say? I feel like she probably knows everything that she said to Bruce as it regards to Cass, so to be reminded and then the fact that he kind of focuses in on these extreme criticisms that she's had about abuse like we're throwing out some strong words here where I think she probably did it a bit more delicately and then says you're right and that's flummoxing I think to hear from Batman but that he has owned up I think to yeah this is one of my flaws that I do use people, maybe not intentionally, it's just how it kind of happens and even owns up to that, and which is probably why he stutters a bit at the end when Cass accuses him of using the people who have been kidnapped in order to ultimately reach his goals. So he has, like, a good endpoint, but the means to the end are not the best in terms of, what he does. But no, it's we've been having some good mom-dad conversations in this book, I would say.
Hmm. I like the art. It's a different artist than
Mhm.
Rick Gennardi, and it's very kind of like detailed and realistic, and he's in a lot of shadow. And this is one of those things where I'm like, maybe he should have his mask. So I remember in issue 23 when he was in the Batcave and Oracle was in the clock tower and they were like on Skype or Zoom, he had his mask off. And this is like in like the dark Batman era, so he's always Batman. But like he's so open with Barbara
Mm-hmm.
that to me it's not like the scene at the end. It makes sense for him to have the cowl on, and here I don't dislike it, but I feel that like it would be more characteristically honest if he were unmasked in this scene
Yeah.
with Barbara.
Yeah. He doesn't get as emotionally naked as I
Yeah.
think he does with Barbara often. They've been through a lot. They've been through a lot together. I do like that human trafficking is the focus on here. I feel like, I mean, this is 2003. Obviously, human trafficking has been going on for a while. I think it's only really been recently that people are understanding, oh, actually, slavery still exists. But it seems like 2003 to bring that up is pretty forward thinking. And even probably when I read it, whenever I did my read the first time, I may not have recognized it, but now with the eyes of understanding what is actually going on, I appreciate it more. Oh, this is a pretty
Hmm.
cool layout of this issue here with everything that's going on. She's doing some Batman tactics, some fear tactics, if you notice.
Yeah, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, she knows her mission. She understands what she needs to do to get there. Perhaps is a bit too far. We don't want people to be like Batman, but because
I want
that's
to be like
reckless
Batman.
behavior. Well, then you should fire yourself. Who who
Nice.
who do you think is right? Is someone right in this debate regarding this case here?
Oh, no, I read this and like, yeah, she's gonna like, like, oh, here's a weakness I can exploit for my Batcher crusade. But like, I think I like Cassandra's reaction
Mhm.
that because it feels like the first time Cassandra's really like, she looks up to Batman so much. I mean, she may have these sort of like fear that he disapproves of her, but this is the first time that she's like, you did something I do not like. And I think Batman, I mean, I don't think you should read this as Batman was in any way contributing to the exploitation of human trafficking victims for any some sort of like I think he genuinely was like, we were going to get those people, but and you got in our way. But when she attacks on you use those people, those kids, that's not a conversation he's used to having with Cassandra. With Dick, with Barbara, yeah, they mouth off all the time to him, but like I like him that he's kind of stuttering, almost because like it's not something that he would kind of anticipate discussing with her because she's typically so loyal to him,
Mhm.
and I don't know, it's a vulnerable detail that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think she usually goes along with what he does and kind of his word is law and she believes that his intentions are always good. But now, I mean, it's almost like she's becoming even though I think a lot of the argument is that well she's 18, she's acting like a teenager for the first time. It's also like I feel like she's becoming an autonomous human being separate from Batman. Like she's actually coming into her own and yes, she's still wants to emulate him, but I think she's also understanding who she is and what those limitations might be and coming into her own belief system, which I think is powerful for, a young woman. I like this discussion because I think it shows that, it reminds me, I guess, of cop dramas and things like that and having someone undercover and maybe someone blows by and does something you're like you messed that up. I feel like Spider-Man has done this several times where he's like gone after something and the cops are like we had a sting operation going, you messed that up, webhead. So it's just something that continually goes, you've got this long game and then someone only sees maybe the short end of it or a smaller focus and then she
What
may have
happened with
messed it up.
Nightwing in the Young Justice animated series? I recall somebody kind of confronting him about something along those lines.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, a lot of that show is like the long game that
Yeah.
anyone could potentially mess up, and you're like, "Please don't do what you're doing. You're gonna mess it up." Which I feel like in this previous season, there's a lot going on, and other people could have messed up their mission. But no, I mean, yeah, it's a powerful issue, and
I'm sure it brings you lots of happy catharsis.
happy catharsis, if only because now we know no one is safe. No one is safe from Batman's firings. So I'm happy about that, indeed. And we'll see what happens. She's, yeah, it might be Demon in a Bottle Part 2 with
oh, shut up. It is really
drowning
funny.
her sorrows with sake.
It is really funny to see like the last scene because you were just like blabbing about firing her for like I think probably years now.
Years.
And I kind of forgot that because I know that like we're leading up to issue 50, which is a big confrontation. It kind of slipped my mind that this happens. So when I read this, I was like, oh no, she's gonna go after this.
Okay. Well, final thoughts on 48, and then your grade out of 10 crocodile tears.
I think this is as in character for everyone involved as I was talking about with the Devin Grayson Nightwing issues, like with him, with Dick and Babs kind of arguing back and forth. This feels as true to these characters as that did to them. My fight, I don't know. I would give this 8 out of 10 mommy daddy conversations.
Mommy daddy conversations. Okay. 8 out of 10. I might raise you for once. I mean, there's
Because you
some
got
weird
fired.
detail. Well, yeah. Well, I think there's some good conversation. So I'm going to give you an 8.5 out of 10. Sorry, not sorries.
That's cool. You're so mad because you took Barbara's costume.
Listen, when you do something against my girl, you've made an enemy. Not one, but two. Okay. Donovan and I are going to take a break. And
Yes, we are.
when we get when we get back, I'm going to cover listener emails because I'm trying to space out, and hopefully this first part won't be huge compared to the second part. Some modern quickies. Nightwing's not going to be covered just because my schedule, I couldn't fit it in. I'm so sorry. So next month, which I am sorry about because apparently there's lots of ooh, ah, and
Boy,
objective
howdy.
and smexy time. So I'm sorry, but I'll just overload it on the next episode. And of course, Batgirl's number 10. But first, we have Zaius's radio hour featuring Hot and Her.
Yes.
The radio edit, of course, by
Timeless
Molly.
classic.
Yes.